welcome. My name is Melissa Kane, and I'm the vice chair of BigTent USA. And given the extraordinarily polarized state of our country, I am really glad to be welcoming our friend Jess Piper back into the tent today to talk with braver angels, Randy Freeman and Mike Asbury, about bridging the wide divides that exist in our communities and even within our families. BigTent USA is steadfast in our commitment to defending our democratic values, our Constitution, and the rule of law. Our goal is to empower our communities with facts and calls to action so that we can all become stronger, more effective advocates for our country. And there are always calls to action on our website, but in the spirit of bridging divides, BigTent USA has recently created a series of issues-based talking points to help people navigate difficult conversations with clear, fact-based information. Also, please make sure to join us on Tuesday, April 21st at 7 p.m. Eastern, when we'll be hosting Democratic congressional candidates Shannon Byrd from the Colorado 8th District, Nancy LaCour from South Carolina 1st, and Paige Cognetti from Pennsylvania 8 to talk about the need for new perspectives in Congress and how candidates are campaigning differently to meet this moment. Okay, so I think we should get started. Braver Angels is the nation's largest cross-partisan volunteer-led movement. Randy Freeman is a retired psychotherapist and couples therapist who joined Braver Angels in 2017 because she was upset about political divisiveness. She is presently the New York State coordinator, an ambassador, and a moderator for the organization. Randy sees this work as a continuation of her work as a couples therapist and sees her role as a therapist for the country. Hi, Randy.
Hi.
Mike Asbury has been the co-chair of the Capital Region of the New York State Alliance of Braver Angels since 2020, one of over 125 such local alliances across the United States. Serving with a co-chair of the opposite political persuasion, he guides the local mission of Braver Angels to bring Americans together by bridging the partisan divide to strengthen our democratic republic, and by seeking common ground where none was formerly known. Hi, Mike. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Jess Piper was born and raised in rural America and is the author of the newsletter, The View from Rural Missouri. Mother to 5, hi Jess, and grandmother to 3, she lives on a small farm on the Missouri-Iowa border. Jess was an American literature teacher for 16 years, and after the 2016 election of Donald Trump, she became politically active, running for office in 2022 for state representative in Northwest Missouri. Jess now serves as the executive director of Blue Missouri. Hi, Jess. Thank you, all three of you, for joining us. I know that we are really looking forward to having constructive conversations and finding common ground, and it is not an easy thing to do. So thank you for being here today to help us out. I just want to hand it off to you and start listening. There's a lot I need to learn.
Thank you, Melissa. It's so good to be with everybody today. Thank you for joining us at BigTent. This is something that was a little difficult for me. My friend John Cooper, who works with BigTent, asked me to moderate this conversation. So I was like, sure, I would love to moderate a conversation. So I looked up Braver Angels and I was like, oh boy, are you guys sure you want me to moderate this? These are nonpartisan, very thoughtful, friendly, great people. And I'm known for like punching people in the mouth. So we have got the opposite sides here, and I am so happy to learn some things today about how I can moderate myself, learn to do better with people who don't agree with me. And as we all know, or if you don't know, I live in Missouri. I live on the Iowa line. I'm surrounded by people who do not believe the same way that I do, who are of the opposite political party. And so every single day, whether I go to the grocery store, the post office, wherever I go, I'm going to interact with people who are polar opposites of me. And that is exactly what Braver Angels addresses. And I'm hoping, literally, friends, I'm hoping they can help me learn to speak to people, listen a little better, and maybe be able to extend the olive branch. So let me start with you, Randy. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself and what this is all about?
I actually joined Braver Angels right at the very beginning. I mean, I think I must have been one of the first 1,000 people to join because I was standing at the TV set and throwing shoes at the TV set. And I thought either I'm going to go crazy and my blood pressure is going to go up, or I have to feel like I'm doing something. And the thing that I think scares me the most and drew me to Braver Angels is that we're sort of headed toward being violent with each other. You know, like there's one thing if it's words, but then words can lead to violence if we don't see the other person as a human being. And sometimes we are so blocked by our stereotypes of other people and what we think they think without listening to what they actually think that we're hating them. So as a therapist and as a couples therapist, hey, I did this all the time. So I've done this with lots of workshops. I can't even count how many I've done. And at the end of the workshops, people are talking to each other. So I believe this can work. Maybe you can even change, Jess.
Well, I don't actually physically punch people in the mouth. That's a metaphor, but sometimes I'm pretty angry. So Mike, tell me a little bit about yourself and how you also came to understand this organization and what you're doing within the organization.
Well, this is what I get for clicking around the internet, you know. I started with Braver Angels in 2020 and just dove right in. I'm really largely here for my grandchildren.
Mm.
The future is it's concerning, and polarization, effective polarization, where we really don't think someone is wrong in their opinion, but we think someone is just simply wrong. You are wrong. That's the problem that we have today. It's fine to disagree. We insist on that here. But Braver Angels has taught me something really simply. As a retired pastor some time ago and as a public servant before that, I've discovered how religion, government, culture, politics today is facing, all of those are facing effective polarization, and it affects each other. So, you know, with the work that we've done here, we're seeing success. You know, we have one particular flagship workshop that is called a Red Blue workshop. It's a 7-hour event, and when folks are done with it, 90% of them say, "Yeah, that really worked. That's good. I can do this." And that's an equal number of reds and blues facing each other on specific small issues, calling each other what they are as they see it, and then realizing they're not that. So
The red, yeah.
it
The
works.
Red Blue workshop that we did in Westchester County, after the workshop, they said, "Oh, wow, we want to keep talking." And we started our alliance that way. I mean, they're very, I mean, people become human by the end of the workshop.
Yep, it's amazing. It's very simple family therapy principles that we use, real simple.
Do you see this working in places like where I am? In places where, I mean, it's, 20% of the folks are on board with, progressive politics and the rest are not. Does it work in situations like that where it is such a huge divide?
Well,
Yes.
yes, it's simply yes. I mean, it began in Southern Ohio, Lebanon, Ohio. So, I mean, I don't know the politics of Lebanon, Ohio, but it was
Yeah.
a retired
Conservative.
cop and a Muslim not figuring out how to talk to one another. That's how it
Mhm.
started.
Well, Mike, I do want to give you a chance. I know that you had a couple of slides to show the audience to catch them up with your organization. If you'd like to go ahead and present those.
Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity. You guys are really kind and generous to bring us here. First, I'd just like to give you an overview of what we consider to be our way of relating to one another. In Braver Angels, we call this the Braver Angels way, we state our views freely and fully without fear. That's a real base and a bedrock. Two, we treat people who disagree with us with honesty, dignity, and respect. And three, we welcome opportunities to engage with those whom we disagree. 4, we believe all of us have blind spots and none of us are not worth talking to. 5, we seek to disagree accurately, avoiding exaggeration and stereotypes. 6, we look for common ground where it exists, and if possible, we find ways to work together. 7, we believe that in disagreements, both sides share and learn. And finally, in Braver Angels, neither side is teaching the other or giving feedback on how to think or say things differently. Now, I'm going to turn this over to Randy.
Okay. These questions are an opportunity for you to look at your inner polarizer, the extent to which you might be stereotyping, demonizing, making broad, saying broad things about the other side. And I'm hoping that some of you actually did it. And really what the questions are, looking at how you see the broad group of people on the other side. It's not about how you see an individual politician or your uncle who you can't stand. It's about how you see this broad group on the other side, just in general. So I'd like a little bit of feedback from people about, what did you learn about yourself in answering these questions?
Well, I can tell you my experience if you'd like while we're waiting.
That'd be great. That would be great.
I did it super quick, and I found myself checking off more often than I would have liked, or be somewhere between often and sometimes. I felt like, it made it clear to me that there was some kind of an endorphin involved, or some kind of pleasure, or maybe pleasure is the wrong word, but it some kind of relief in having a common enemy when talking with friends.
Yes, and that's often the case. People just sort of relish having the common enemy together, it's good that you saw that, because at least you see that there might be a need for some depolarization for yourself. And if you look at the chart on the bottom, people who check often might see the others as enemies, or have disdain for them or pity. But what we're aiming for at Braver Angels is to get to the other side, which is a degree of respect and appreciation, even if we don't agree. And at some point, maybe we might find some points of agreement.
Yeah, there are quite a few people who realized that they were more biased than they realized. I knew going in I was biased, so
Okay.
I knew exactly how this was going to go for me.
Okay. And this is actually this questionnaire is actually a part of our Depolarizing Within workshop that we do all over the country. And we do it online too. By the way, a lot of our workshops are online. And when you take this questionnaire and you realize it, then we go through an additional amount of work for people to learn how to listen to each other so that they can apply this to their everyday life. Actually, if it's okay, Mike would like to take that another step so you could see how you might polarize and what does it look like. And it's the horsemen of polarization.
Yeah, we characterize this in a metaphor of the 4 horsemen. It's, as many of you may know, it's a biblical thing, but it's truly something that's real in the culture, religion, politics. We stereotype, we dismiss, we ridicule, and we have contempt. Remember, it's not about your opinion is wrong, but you as a person are wrong. You don't belong here. That's the worst thing that can happen. Now, I'm going to invite you to look very carefully at the first 2 sets of items. It says the distressed will be tempted. Those are the people who basically lost the election. Then the happies will also be tempted. Those are the people who won the election. And look carefully at stereotyping, dismissing, ridicule, and contempt in each of those 2 sets. They read the same. But what's different? What's different is who's in charge now has a different attitude toward the other guy. For the guys who are distressed, they're tempted to say most people on the other side don't know what they're voting for, and they'll be clueless. They're clueless as their leaders run the country into the ground. But the people who won say, well, we're in charge now, and they have nothing to contribute. So no one listens to anybody. What does this do? It has potential effects on our personal life and our civic engagement. We have family conflict, cutoffs for friends and neighbors and coworkers who voted the other way and won't admit their error. And then, of course, on the civic engagement level, we end up becoming warriors and guerrilla fighters. So what do we get? Nowhere. There is a solution. That's the next slide. Keep in mind, if you will, that Braver Angels uses, and one of our co-founders was a professor of family therapy at University of Minnesota. We use simplified family therapy principles to help people to see common ground. And they are this: listen, acknowledge, pivot, and perspective. And our acronym for that is LAP. That's one of our co-founders, David Lapp. And just take a look at the first sentence in each one. Listen to understand. Turn off your arguing mindset. Try it. If you're preparing for your next point, then you're not listening. Consider acknowledging and maybe even agreeing, acknowledging what they said. You heard them. I can tell you have strong feelings about such and such. And I understand. And the third one, many of us find this the most difficult because we want to jump right in now and give them what they really need to hear, which is our perspective. No, this is the humility one. Pivot and wait. Give a signal that you'd like to offer a different perspective. Wait for a clue they're ready to hear and say things like, may I share a few thoughts? It's essentially asking permission. Permission. You didn't say anything about what you thought yet, except maybe you said you agreed a little bit. And then if that's okay, if they say, okay, I'll listen, only then move on. And share your view, share your perspective, even perhaps to say that there are multiple perspectives here. I recognize that, but here is mine, particularly from my own experience, my own life experience. We all have different life experiences, whether we're in Missouri or Montana or Montpelier. We all have different life experiences. So that's a summary of the tools that we use. And now I'm going to turn it back to Randy to talk about our tool set, our activities.
Okay, we already talked about the Red Blue workshop, so I'm not going to go into much detail about it, except that it's highly effective and it's our signature workshop. Equal number of reds and blues, reds meaning more conservative, blues meaning more liberal, in the room together, and doing a bunch of exercises. We also have skills-based workshops, where we learn how to listen. Depolarizing Within, which uses that questionnaire. Family and politics is very, very popular right before the holidays, when everybody has to face people in their families with whom they disagree and they don't want to have a fist fight, so they want to know how can they listen to them. We also have what's called one-to-one. So if you want to have a one-to-one conversation with somebody from Missouri who's conservative and you're a liberal from New York, you can have that conversation, and it's very orchestrated. You get to know them first as people and where they're coming from. It's wonderful, and it has lots of different permutations. And a lot of these workshops contribute to our alliance growth as well. But recently we've started doing what we call the Common Ground Workshop, and we voted. Mike will talk about that at our last convention, to pick a topic that is really important, which was immigration. And Mike, you can talk a little bit about our Common Ground Workshop and about our citizens-led solutions, which is our most recent work in Brave Angels.
Thank you, Randy. I'm going to stop sharing now and just talk without a slide about that, and then we'll go further on. What we're after right now, and this is some of the change that's occurred at Braver Angels, is we're moving from virtual citizenship and doing the kinds of exercises you just described to participation citizenship, leading the train, not depending upon elected officials to do that, but we do that. And we call that courageous citizenship that leads to citizen-led solutions. Courageous citizenship that leads to citizen-led solutions. And there are three elements to that that lead us to actual success with politicians. We foster relationships. We build teams. We build trust, reflecting on shared experiences, not just opinions. And we choose a subject to tackle. Randy mentioned that that was done with immigration. It was a successful workshop in Long Island recently about that. And from that, we forge common ground solutions. Teams design solutions that account for a range of perspectives and real world wisdom based on what works from the citizen standpoint. And three, we follow that through to implementation. Citizens then work with local leaders to bring those ideas to life for community and democracy. There was a workshop where there was a series of solutions brought by red and blues, an equal number, to a particular politician who looked at it and said, "How long did it take you to come up to this agreement?" And I said, "Oh, it took us a few hours and, out of the day." He said, "We couldn't do this in Congress over 5 years."
Yeah.
Can I ask you guys a question? And this may sound a little cynical, but remember my background and where I'm from. I always have to do this work. I always have to do this work. Nobody on the other side is doing that work. I mean, we saw after the election, they were going to diners in my part of the world and asking, Trump voters about why they voted this way. They never talked to me. They never talked to people that are like me out in my area. I always have to do the bridge building. I always have to present the olive branch. When I was running for office and I knocked 1,000 doors, let me tell you, it didn't matter whose door I knocked on. The difference between what we wanted is this much. We wanted funded roads. We wanted funded schools. We wanted to make sure that our kids are safe from violence. We wanted sidewalks and libraries and police and fire protection. But there was one thing that kept people from voting for me, even though we believe the same thing, and it was religion. And so every single time, and born and raised a Southern Baptist, right? I mean, what do you want to do? Have a Bible contest? I mean, I'll win. But how do we do this when we're the ones always doing the work? I don't see the folks on the other side doing this work for me. So how do you convince people stay in the work, keep doing the work when it feels like I'm the only one doing it?
Yeah, Jessica, I think that first of all, in Braver Angels, that's not the way it is, and depending upon the part of the country you're in, you might feel that you're the only one doing the work. Other parts of the country, different people will feel that they're doing the work. I mean, you can only take responsibility for yourself. And maybe in your doing what you're doing and listening carefully. I'll tell one quick story about listening. There was another moderator I was working with, and she and her father were like going at it and really upset. And she decided to apply the Brave Angels principles in listening to her father. And after about a year, she noticed that he was starting to shift his view on some things, or at least willing to verbalize that. And she said, "Dad, you didn't believe that a year ago. Now, this is not our purpose to get people to change their view." And she said, "What's different?" He said, "I noticed you were listening and I decided to listen too." So you can control yourself. You can't control all those people out there who aren't listening. But when you model that kind of listening behavior, people start paying attention, and maybe some of them will listen too.
So, Mike, I'm looking at the questions coming in, and there are a lot of questions where people are like, "Yes, I love this. I agree with this," but we're dealing with something different now. We're dealing with something that fascism, a war of choice. We're dealing with things that aren't just regular let's get together kumbaya stuff. Mike, how do you address coming together and listening to each other when we are facing, you know, really, really difficult times?
I love history. And one of my favorites to talk about in Bravery Angels is Abe Lincoln. He was real. He once said to a colleague, he said, I don't like that man. I don't like that man. I have to get to know him better. You see, the journey we're on here is not up here where all the noise is. It's not up here. All the comments are talking about the noise in the head. I get it. I got it. I got noise in my head too. I'm no different than anybody. But what I've learned is that the journey goes from here down to here. And you may say, well, that's just idealism. No, it works. It worked during Lincoln's time. He hired folk on his cabinet which did not agree with him, you know. So there are many, many models to counteract this narrow-mindedness that occurs in history from time to time. We're in one of those times.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, I'm doing this for my grandkids. This is not going to happen tomorrow. If you are looking for it to happen tomorrow, you're going to be disappointed. And yes, Lincoln was in a class by himself, and so are we.
It sounds like you're planting trees, right? You're hopeful,
That's
right?
all it is. It's about hope.
Trees that you won't sit under, but that your children and grandchildren will.
That's all I know.
So, Randy, there's a question that came in and it said, but doesn't this premise rest on the fact that we're dealing with decent human beings on each side? It's just folks have a different belief system. And how do you address that? This sort of gets back to what I was talking about. We all want the same thing, but different religions, you know, have us doing different things. Is this just about different belief systems?
Well, I think in some cases there are different belief systems, and that's okay. You know, we can't all, I mean, we're different people. We can't all believe the same way. And that's okay. You can have different belief system and maybe have some similar values. I mean, that's, you know, you kind of scratch under the surface and we have some similar values. Belief systems, of course, we can have different belief systems.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I want to say, if I can, that we really hope that all the listeners amongst you, there are a few that are feeling really uncomfortable right now. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to help you to feel uncomfortable so that you can realize in yourself what you are doing. It's not what the other guy is doing. It's not about the other guy. It's about you. You know,
Stop, you're making a bunch of sense here, Mike.
we can go all day long complaining about the other guy, and it's really going to get nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
So, one problem, and I notice this a lot where I am, where we are losing local journalism. We don't have local papers anymore. Our papers that were daily are now weekly. And so we're really struggling with different realities at this point. And the people in the, you know, may not know, my parents are MAGA. My mom is MAGA. She's voted for MAGA 3 times. I talk to her every single day. And what Randy was saying, that the daughter was talking to the father and it took a year. I'm seeing cracks in my mom, but it's been 10 years, a decade of my life trying to make progress here. So what do we do about the different sources, and how can we come together on a truth, a fact?
Well, you know, one of the things I do, Jess, and I do this almost every day, is I read different sources. And if you go to the Brave Angels website, they actually have suggestions for places you can go to get intelligent points of view from both sides. There are actually intelligent people on both sides who have opinions based on some real facts. So, and some of it is their opinion, but you know, they're leaning one way or the other, and we're allowed to do that. But I read different sources. I go to different social media sites. I read and I listen to different sources. So I know what both sides are saying. And I think it's really important to do that, because I mean, I'll point out, for instance, in the New York Times, something that they said that was biased. And people I know who only read the New York Times will say to me, really? Oh no, they're not biased. Sure they are. How do they pick a title to an article? Where do they place something in the article? Is the counter argument at the very end of the article? You have to read critically. It's really important. And my son is a newspaper publisher, so I'm very sensitive to that.
At the 2023 convention in, get this, Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. That's where we met, next to the Civil War battlefield in the college. We were privileged to have on stage in a plenary session editors from large, or editorial staff from large newspapers, the Times, Deseret News, and another one I can't remember. And I asked the New York Times editorial staff, I said, I have a very simple question for you. Does hell sell the news? She could not deny it. It does. I don't care who you are, or what your bias is, what your experience is. Hell sells the news. We live in silos, folks. And it's created by a whole bunch of things that are technological, from the internet and you name it, a whole bunch of things.
Yeah.
And so what do we do about that? We're not going to change the silos, and the money is being made by large media firms. That's it. They're not going to change.
Yeah. And a lot of the kids are getting their information from TikTok, YouTube, all those places, and they don't even look at the newspapers or the news. So we're creating a whole new generation with even bigger problems.
It's funny that you mentioned that, Randy, because my stepfather is in his 70s and he gets all of his news from YouTube. I had no idea. I had no idea that he was getting his news from there, but he is. Mike, I have a question for you. You mentioned that you're a former pastor. How do you find common ground with someone who has maybe part of their beliefs are completely rooted in that religion, but it's something that is very offensive, to a lot of people, say, misogyny, say reproductive care access, that sort of thing. How do you find common ground with someone who finds so much of their identity within their religion?
Well, as I said before, this way we propose has a lot to do with religion, culture, and politics, and they're all intertwined. Let me just tell you a quick story. I was talking to the co-founder of Braver Angels at the 23 convention, and I said to him, "Hey, Bill," this is the family therapy professor. I say, "Hey, Bill, I got to tell you, as a former pastor, what we're doing here really, really reminds me of the Beatitudes." And then he said, "Now, Mike," and he looked at Smile. "Now, Mike, we're not a religious organization, but blessed be the peacemakers."
Bless him. So, Randy, I know that you're a therapist. What is this polarization within the last decade? What do you see has happened, within family dynamics across the country?
I see cutoffs. I see, people not talking to each other or yelling at each other or avoiding. One of the things people do at family dinners is avoid any talk of politics because we don't want to get ourselves into that kind of mode. But even beyond that, I mean, one of the things that I saw as a therapist that I found very disturbing was therapists who said, I would never treat a conservative or a Trump supporter in my practice. To me, that was really scary to hear from people. And I actually did a workshop with fellow therapists just for that reason, depolarizing within, because we have to pay attention to how we're doing that to large groups of people and maybe not giving them the care they need. So yeah, I think it's very frightening that it has gotten so far, and it has.
One of the commenters, Jessica, just said, "I think the point is to not argue." I would like to address that, if I may. That is not what we're saying. What we're saying is that we have skills, all right? Very simply, listen, acknowledge, pivot, perspective. At the point of pivot, if you ask someone, "May I share my opinion?" and they say, "No, I'm not interested in your opinion." Well, we have another skill. It's called exit. It's okay. But to say it, this is about don't arguing, we don't agree because democracy will crumble unless we argue. We need to argue. We need to be honest with each other, or it's all going to fall down.
And you can take that into couples therapy because you don't want couples not to argue at all. You really want to be able to disagree with each other. You might have to respect the fact that they don't want to talk about something at that moment and pick the right moment. And I think that's what we do as well.
I really love that you give people the grace to exit, and somebody else said that too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
This is not forcing anybody to do anything. Again, it's not up here. The journey is to get down here. You can play up here in a playground all day long and you're going to get anywhere. It's down here that the action happens. That's democracy. Ego is the enemy of a democracy.
There is a question and it said, is there a Braver Angels young group? Do you work with youth?
Yeah. We actually, we're going into high schools. We're going into high schools. We have a whole program going into high schools. We've done a whole bunch of them in New York, Connecticut, and around the country. We have actually a paid group in Brave Angels that are going into colleges. And in fact, they went into Columbia and NYU and had a discussion about the Palestinian-Israeli thing and our involvement, which actually went very well. So we are doing this, and yes, we are, and we'd love more young people to join. I actually have my granddaughter join the organization, and next week she is going to be having a Brave Angels workshop at her high school. So I am prouder than can be about that.
That's fantastic. My daughter loves speech and debate. And so I think it's a fantastic way to get young people in there. What do you do when you're having a conversation with someone and it comes to besides just exiting, or is there a plan for someone who may be, racist or may have a deep flaw? Is it always that you should exit, or is it something that you work for 10 decades or a decade like I have? What is the solution for something that is that deep and that serious?
Go ahead, Randy. I know what you want to say.
Okay, I'm ready for this one. Okay. Daryl Davis is a Black jazz musician, and he decided to befriend the Ku Klux Klan, members of the Ku Klux Klan. He just got to know them, and he allowed them to get to know him. And in the process, and you can look him up, all of you can look him up, in the process, he got 200 people to hang up their hoods and their whatever that they wear and to change their views just because they got to know him as a human being. So I mean, you can only try. I mean, you try to get to know each other over food, over connecting over your kids or sports or something. Music's a big thing, and we have that in our organization. And when you connect in that sort of way, something moves. And as Mike said, in the heart, something in the heart moves. So yes.
Our music program is called Gangsta Grass. Get
Gangsta
it?
Bluegrass.
Gangsta Grass.
Is it bluegrass?
No, it's rap and bluegrass. Okay. Rap and bluegrass.
Fantastic. Okay, so there is another question from Karen, and she says, how do you deal with someone othering to groups of people, even your whole party? I see it moving away from the individual and dangerous on both sides. She said, my general semantics class in college years also helped me see it. So how do you deal with someone who is othering other groups?
I'm thinking about actually our depolarizing within workshop works with you looking at how your whole side might be othering the other group. Yeah. And what can you say to the people on your side when you see them doing it? So I think that's what we're talking about. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, remember, blues polarize with blues, reds polarize with reds, and sometimes blues have their own and reds have their own disagreements within, and it's perfectly normal. But the skills that we've learned, and we've just given you a taste. Remember, there's so much more on the website. If you really want to learn about Braver Angels, come up with $12 on your credit card. We don't ask for a lot of money. We don't want a lot of money. We're just doing this because we have to. And discover the scale of what we're doing here. Take a Braver Angels workshop. Look for your alliance in your local area. You know, there's much for you to do. Democracy takes a lot of work. If that's not clear from our discussion today, I don't know how to say it. It takes a lot of work.
Yeah. You know, can I mention one more thing, Jess? I don't know if you've ever heard of Citizen Climate Lobby. It's a lobbying group to help with the climate, which has generally been more of a liberal kind of focus. But one of the things they've done is they've opened their organization. They want conservatives and Republicans, conservatives and liberals, Republicans and Democrats, so that they can understand where the other side is coming through and work with some ideas with them, you know, like let them feel like they're being heard. And even in terms of your organization, thinking about, you know, encouraging people who are more conservative to join so that you really can get to know, well, what is it that they want? And is there some way we can all find some common ground? And you might be surprised that a lot of them don't like Trump.
And it's interesting in Braver Angels and larger groups, especially when we move to the convention and places away from the alliance, that I know folks in the alliance, that we discover that when we hear what they have to say, that they're new contact, I go, wow, you know, that's okay. I can do that differently. And I've done that. You know, my views have changed on certain things.
I will tell you, there is a lot of common ground between conservatives and liberals. And I have very real world experiences with that because I live in a world where CAFOs come to town, concentrated animal feeding operations, and nobody wants one of them in their backyard. And if you want to see farmers get together with environmentalists, talk about a CAFO or talk about a data center. There are people all in my state because they are coming here hot and heavy and trying to take over farmland and trying to, you know, take our clean air and our clean water. Well, guess what? My neighbor who voted for Trump 3 times is going to show up to the same meeting I am, and we're all going to be saying, you vote for that data center and we're going to vote you out of office. So there are a lot of things that will bring, you know, folks together. And just like you said, it's finding those things. It's school funding. Everyone wants to fund the schools. Everybody wants a sidewalk and a highway. So these things are bringing people together. It's just when we get down to some of the brass tacks that everybody pulls back apart, right? And so that's why this is so helpful to help us find that once we come together, how can we kind of stay together, if not, you know, just loosely? How do we keep it going?
With relationships.
Yeah.
Just simply that, relationships. I mean,
and you know, go ahead. I'm sorry, Mike.
I was going to mention citizen-led solutions. I mean,
Yeah.
is the direction in which we're going. We're moving from virtual discussion about democracy and so forth to actually involving elected officials after we come up with our solutions. Not going in, oh, would you please solve this problem? It's driving me crazy. No, we are crazy because we haven't done anything. We haven't come up with common ground solutions. And it's there. It's just waiting for us to do it. It's just waiting. You know, there's no excuses anymore.
There was one more thing I wanted to say about relationships. And I know something you said triggered that, is that, you know, years ago, people would say, I don't want my kids marrying somebody of a different race or a different religion. Now, most people are saying, I don't want my family member, my loved one, my child, marrying somebody of a different political party. That is a problem. That is a problem that really needs to change. It's a dehumanization of the other side, and dehumanization is scary. I mean, that comes before war.
Yeah, that's right.
So we are getting close to the end of our time, where Melissa will come back in just a minute. I'd like to give you guys just a couple of minutes to talk about, you know, what you find really important, what this work has meant to you, and what it's meant to the communities that you've worked within.
Go ahead, Randy.
Actually, it's been all consuming for me. And Mike and I were talking about this before. One of the things that drew me into it is I know that when a civilization falls apart, when things really get bad, that's when violence occurs. And in my case, I happen to be Jewish. That's also when anti-Semitism resurfaces, and I'm seeing it already. It's really gotten bad on both sides. And I think that's what happens when society gets frayed, when we dehumanize others, when we want to blame others rather than taking responsibility for ourselves and what we can do to make things better, for listening to each other, for caring about each other. There's something really broken. And I saw that like 2017. I said, this is not good. This is going to get worse. And frankly, that's why I'm doing the work. I mean, I'm so passionate about it. My husband's sitting here right now listening, and he says, like, he's getting sick of it. That's all I talk about. We had a contractor into our house today, and I'm talking to him about Brave Angels. So, but that's really why it's important, because I mean, there's no other way. I mean, we have to go forward as a democracy. We want to go forward as a democracy, and we can't if we're not talking to the other side. So that's what drives me. Mike, you can say something.
Well said. Thank you. Question was, am I hopeful? Are you hopeful? Yes, I am very hopeful, but it's going to take work. You know, it's just simply going to take work. I mean, this is not going to happen overnight. One way to describe the problem is we're all who are polarized. We're doing emotional reasoning. Those two words don't work together. They don't. You know, you can't feel with your intellect. You feel with your heart. And so what we're trying to discover here and pass on is how we can avoid emotional reasoning. You know, my own personal experience with it is that it's become, for me, well, I see the behavior of extremism as being like a social drunkenness. You know, it's just like a drunkenness. It moves, and any psychiatrist or psychologist will tell you, it moves the brain in a different way. And how do we stop that? How do we become politically, religiously, and culturally sober? How do we do that? And we propose that our methods have worked. We've gotten evidence that they worked. We're not making this up. We do a lot of research on this. And we think that over time, as we grow, and we're growing pretty fast, in fact, and it takes a lot of work. And like Randy said, it's tiring some days, but we have to do it. You know, we need people to come up from the community and join us.
Well, I so appreciate this conversation, and thank you for letting me moderate it, even though, I'm I'm more of an aggressive person than a listener, but I've gotten better just by listening to both of you. I'm so grateful for you, grateful for the work you do, grateful for everyone in the comments who came to listen to people being braver angels. Thank you, friends.
And ditto from me and from us at BigTent, and to you, Jess, for your thoughtful, insightful questions and your honesty. I have to say, one takeaway that I keep thinking about is that we need to keep engaging and keep the dialogue opening, and that, yes, we have to have the grace to exit, but that shouldn't be the default setting. And I thought that was really an interesting thing to think. But before we close, I was speaking with Jess a little before we went live, and I think I had asked about, in her neck of the woods, where it really is a very polarized setting, whether anything's changing, whether people are starting to look at what's happening in the White House and look at this administration and say, wait a minute, hold on. And I'm wondering if that's the case, and if Jess, if that is the case, has this conversation given you any tools for moving forward at all?
Well, I won't be punching people in the mouth.
Thank
you, Randy. Thank you, Mike. No, it's fantastic, because I have been doing this work in the Heartland for years now, and I am seeing change, big changes coming from people in tiny rural communities and spaces. People who said, you know what, I voted for this, but I didn't mean that. And it's like, okay, All right. It took you a long time to come along, but come on, let's go, right? Especially when it comes to immigration. I know you've probably heard the stories, but there are people who thought, I think it's good to get rid of criminals, right? That's what I'm doing. I'm voting to get rid of criminals. That's not what happened. And my neighbors realized that. They didn't mean the people that worked at the Mexican restaurant down the street. They know those people and they love those people and they know they're not criminals. And so they were confused by all of this. And so it's really reaching into these communities. It's finding out that people have lost their health care. People are losing their schools. Our children aren't coming back home. They're having to move somewhere else because there is nothing left to offer in these little towns. It is breaking our communities and they are realizing it. So if you're looking for change, I know a lot of people have written off the heartland. I know a lot of people think of flyover country as whatever. They're all the same way out there. That is not true. And I'm telling you, in every corner, in every space of this country, I'm seeing people realize it's not what I meant. And I don't want this to go on anymore. I want a democracy. I want my children to be able to thrive in this country, and I'm going to do better. And that should give everybody hope.
It really is hopeful. And it's something I feel like you've written about quite a bit, which is that
Yeah.
it's one conversation at a time.
Yes.
And I believe that's tying in very much to what Mike and Randy have been talking about here today. If you can do it one at a time, you can take a deep breath and not see us as us against them. It's really hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But thank you for giving us the tools, all of you, for giving us the tools to be able to do that. And thank you, Jess, for the incredible work that you always do and for moderating for us. I hope you'll all come back under the tent, into the big tent again. And thank you to all of our members here who've come today to this tent talk. Thank you for giving us your time. And I hope you'll come back really soon. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day and stay strong, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Hello.